Sing on, sing on, sing, sing on till I am filled with joy, till I am filled with joy. For then my listening soul you move. For then my listening soul you move. You move to pleasures that can never cloy. Your eyes, your mien, your tongue declare that you are music everywhere. Your eyes, your mien, your tongue declare that you are music invade both eye and ear. Pleasures invade both eye and ear. So fierce, so fierce. The transports are they wound. So fierce, the transports are they wound. And all my senses feasted are, and all my senses feasted are, though yet the treaty's only sound, though yet the treaty's only sound, 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 is only sound. I must perish, I must perish by your chance, unless you
Hi, my name's Nick Phan, and I'm a tenor, as you just heard, and my recital partner for this program is pianist Robert Mollicone. Bob is a really dear friend of mine who lives out here in San Francisco and is an excellent pianist who works at the San Francisco Opera and collaborates with singers pretty frequently. And we collaborate pretty frequently, so here we are. We actually ran out of time at our venue where we recorded this program, so I wasn't able to record these spoken intros there. So you get a change of scenery and you get a little glimpse of part of my house for these intros, which I hope you don't mind. When Great Lakes Chamber Music Festival approached me about doing this virtual vignette with the theme of visions and revisions, the first composer who popped into my head was Benjamin Britten, because Britten was constantly looking backwards and incorporating techniques and music of years past into his own works and using those techniques to inform his own writing. And it creates this really unique voice for him. And one composer he looked back at a lot was Henry Purcell, because Henry Purcell is, up until Benjamin Britten, the best composer at writing music for the English language. The way he approaches the English language is so imaginative and so evocative and virtuosic. He's a genius at pulling out these ideas in the text and realizing them musically. You know, for instance, when I have to sing the word pleasure in the last song, I have to sing these giant melismas full of 16th notes and that go up and down the range, and it sounds like fun, and it is fun to sing. So he's a great word painter. And Britten was the same. The next set on this program is the bulk of this program. It's the next 8 songs, which form the cycle Winter Words. Britten wrote this sort of mid-career, around in the 50s, and he set 8 poems of Thomas Hardy to music. And while there is no through narrative to this song cycle, each one of these is a little vignette. Each little song is a sort of mini world, all unto its own. They are related by theme, and they're obviously also related by the poet, Thomas Hardy. And they're organized in a very cool way. They are organized as a palindrome. So if you're a math nerd out there, a palindrome is a number that if you reverse it, it's still the same. So 1001, for instance, if you wrote it backwards, still spells out 1001. And so this cycle, 1 and 8 relate to each other, 2 and 7 relate to each other, 3 and 6 relate to each other, and 4 and 5 relate to each other, just in terms of themes. 1 and 8 are a person wondering about time and how time passes, and is wondering about how youth is passed, and perhaps will we ever get back to that state of innocence again? And in the 8th song, he's really hoping that we'll get there soon. In 2 and 7, both of those songs deal with birds. 3 and 6 both deal with young boys at train stations. And 4 and 5 are nostalgic reminiscences of one who is lost. We hope you enjoy this next set.
And a late bird wings across, and the pines like waltzers waiting, give their black heads a toss. Each leaves that yellow the noontime float past like specks in the air. I set every tree in my June time, and now they obscure the sky. And the children who ramble through here conceive that there never has been a time when no trees, no tall trees grew here, that none will in time be seen. And the roof lamp's oily flame played down on his listless form and face. He rapt past knowing to what he was going, or whence he came, or whence he came. In the band of his hat, the journeying boy had a ticket stuck, and a string around his neck bore the key of his box. The twinkled gleams of the lamp's sad beams, like a living thing, a living thing. What past can be yours, O journeying boy, towards a world unknown, who calmly, as if incurious quite on all at stake, can undertake this plunge alone. Knows your soul a sphere, O journeying boy, a rude realm's far above, whence with spacious vision you mark and meet this region of sin that you find you in. But not of. A baby watched a ford where two, a wagtail came for drinking, a blaring bull went wading through, the wagtail showed no shrinking, a stallion splashed his way across, the birdie nearly sinking. He gave his plumes a twitch and a toss, and held his own unblinking. Next saw the baby round the spot The Magdalena winking with terror rose and disappeared. The baby fell a-thinking. Little wood thing, creak, creak, when I touch you with elbow and knee. That is the way you speak, speak, the way you speak of one who gave you to me. You, little table, she brought me with her own hand, and she looked at me with a thought, that I did not understand. Whoever owns it alone and hears it will never know what our history has. Upon this creek, from long ago. He often would ask us that when he died, after playing so many to their last rest, if out of us any should here abide, and it would not task us, we would with our lutes play over him, by his grave bring the psalm he liked best. The one who censured Mount Ephraim, and perhaps we should seem to him in terrestrial like the seraphim. As soon as I knew that his spirit was gone, I thought, this is due, and spoke thereupon. I think, said the vicar, a red service quicker than the files out of doors in these frosts and wars. That old-fashioned way requires a fine day, and it seems to me it had better not be. Hence that afternoon, though never knew he that his wish could not be, to get through it faster, they buried the master without any tune. But 'twas said that when at the dead of next night the vicar looked out, struck on his cane throne to round about, where the frost was graying the headstoned grass. A band running white like the saints in church glass, singing and playing, singing, singing and playing. The ancient stave by the grandmaster's grave. Such the tenor man told when he had grown old. The thrushes sing as the sun is going, and the finches whistle in ones and pairs. And as it gets dark, the nightingales in bushes pipe as they can when April wears, as if all time were theirs. These are brand new birds of 12 months growing, which a year ago were less than twain. No finches were, no nightingales, no thrushes, but only particles of grain and earth and rain. There is not much that I can do, for I've no money that's quite my own. Spoke up the pitying child, a little boy with a violin, at the station before the train came in. But I can play my fiddle for you, and the nice one 'tis, and good in tone. The man in the handcuffs smiled, the constable looked, and he smiled too, as the fiddle began to twang. And the man in the handcuffs suddenly sang with grimful glee, "This life so free is the thing for me. This life so free, this life so free." And the constable smiled and said no word, as if unconscious of what he heard. And so they went on till the train came in. yes, and as indeed earth's testimonies stand before the birth of consciousness. When all went well, none suffered sickness, love, or loss, none knew regret, starved hope, or heart-burnings. None cared whatever crash or cross brought wrack to things. If something ceased, no tongue bewailed. If something winced and waned, no heart was wrung. If brightness dimmed and dark prevailed, no sense was stark, not the disease of feeling germed, and bridal rightness took her tint of wrong, and passion shall be reaffirmed. How long, how long, how long, how
So another way Britten would look backwards and take music from the past or music that's part of our collective consciousness and repurpose it for the present moment was that he was brilliant at arranging folk songs. Actually, when he and Peter Pears were on their recital tours in the United States during World War II, Pears actually suggested to him that he arrange some songs so they could end their programs, their recital programs, with some folk tunes. And so that's how that tradition started. And he actually ended up arranging tons of them. I think there's something like 8 or 9 volumes of folk song arrangements by Benjamin Britten. So we're going to do 2 for you right now, Come Ye Not from Newcastle, and then Sally in Our Alley.
Come you not from Newcastle, come you not there away, or met you not my true love, riding on a bonny bay. Why should I not love my love? Why should not my love love me? Why should I not speed after him, since love to all is free? Come you not from Newcastle, come you not there away, oh, met you not my true love, riding on a bonny bay? Why should I not love my love? Why should not my love love me? Why should I not speed after him, since love to all is free. Of all the girls that are so smart, there's none like pretty Sally. She's the darling of my heart, and lives in our alley. There's ne'er a lady in the land that's half so sweet as Sally. She is the darling of my heart, and lives in our alley. Of all the days are in the week, I dearly love but one day, and that's the day that comes between a Saturday and Monday. For then I'm dressed all in my best to walk abroad with Sally. She is the darling of my heart, and lives in our alley. When she is by, I leave my work. I love her so sincerely. My master comes like any Turk, and bangs me most severely. But let him bang, he's very full. I'd bet it all for Sally. She is the darling of my heart, and lives in our alley. My master carries me to church, and often am I blamed, for then I leave him in the lurch. As soon as text is named, I leave the church in sermon time, and slink away to Surrey. She is the darling of my heart, and lives in our alley. My master and the neighbors all make game of me and Sally, and but for her I'd better be a slave and row a galley. But when my sad long years are out, oh, then I'll marry Sally. Oh, then we'll wed, and then we'll bed, but not in our alley.
So we're going to end this program with one of my favorite songs, An Evening Hymn by Henry Purcell. When Purcell wrote these pieces, the accompaniment he conceived was for a basso continuo, which it would be an ensemble of a cello, a harpsichord, and maybe a plucked instrument like a theorbo, or maybe a harp, maybe a viola da gamba. But all you really get in the score is a bass line and some figured bass. And these instrumentalists, particularly the harpsichordist or the theorbo player or the lute player, would improvise based off of the harmonic structure that was laid out by Purcell. And when he was studying these pieces, Britten decided to arrange them and create his own realizations of these figured bass lines. And there are a ton of these realization arrangements, and he adapted them for the piano so that the piano would realize this figured bass line in a specific way, according to Benjamin Britten's revision of Henry Purcell's vision. And this is one of those. So we hope you enjoy, and we can think of no better way to end this program.
Praise the mercy that
absolutely extraordinary. I wish we could all. I think it might be technically too complicated for us to all unmute and applaud you, but we could. Maybe we could. I'm going to applaud you right now.
Thank you.
I thank you so much. It was just the most extraordinary recital. It felt like a personal gift to me because those two composers have been with me since childhood, and you sang them more beautifully than I could possibly imagine. We have some questions waiting, and I don't want to spend too much time with my own personal reminiscence, is because I'm gonna get all Welsh and sentimental. But it was so fantastic. I want to ask you. Well, when did you first come into contact with English music, with British music? What drew you to it? I know we have other questions because I've seen them already. People want to know how you started, singing and all that kind of thing. But given that you'll give us a little bit of that history anyway, tell me where your connection to to Britten Purcell comes from.
Sure. So I first encountered British music in general in choir because we would sing all of these English madrigals. And I loved those because that felt like chamber music. And as I was making that transition from being a violinist into a singer, being able to do ensemble work like that felt really gratifying. So that's kind of where I started. And then the other place, right around the same time, because I had not completely made the switch yet, was playing Young Person's Guide to the Orchestra in youth orchestra, which
Yeah.
actually we had booked a narrator. Like I'd done all the rehearsals for the months and months that you do in youth orchestra. And then they booked a narrator, and strangely, for some reason, that person canceled. So I was like, I raised my hand and I said, I'm in the back of the seconds, like you really don't need me to play. And so I ended up reading the narration for that performance, but I rehearsed it for months and months, and I loved that connection because I mean that piece also he starts with a Purcell theme and then
Yes.
kind of takes you through the entire orchestra, and being a youth orchestra nerd, I loved every aspect of that. So, and then shortly after that, when I started really seriously studying singing, my teacher actually gave me a bunch of Purcell songs right from the get-go.
Right.
They're actually some of them are really great, tunes to give young students. It's pretty common to give them alongside your regular batch of 24 Italian whoopies that everybody sings when they start. So,
Indeed.
That's kind of where it all started, and it grew
And
from
then
there.
coming to Britain after that, in terms of his vocal repertoire, this is the kind of question that people ask me. I don't know, and so feel free to punch me virtually. People ask me this about the Elgar Cello Concerto. How do you play it with Jacqueline Dupre's interpretation in the background? You know what I'm going to ask you. But I'd like to preface that question by saying that I personally think that you have absolutely a unique voice and a unique perspective on Britain, which touches me very deeply because I was touched very deeply by Peter Pears, hearing him sing all this repertoire on record, of course. How do you deal with an interpretation that's so close to, I mean, literally as close as you could possibly get to the composer?
Yeah, I mean, they were obviously everything was written for him, and they were the equivalent of married, so it's you can't get closer. Yeah, I just listen to those recordings as inspiration. I mean, it's funny. People are so divided about his sound, his
Yes.
vocal color, and I love it. I think it's ethereal and haunting, and I mean, he's such a wonderful storyteller. So basically, I just try and be inspired by it. But at the same time, Britain is so, I don't know, there's so many instructions in the music that I don't know, you just sort of follow the guide map and you're sort of led to where you're supposed to go in a way. And between that guide map and sort of hearing
the sort of, at least it seems like, what were his intentions. I mean, in a way, I feel like that's a blessing, right? Because normally, you know, we're dying to be able to ask the composer the question, what did you mean in this specific spot? And
Yes.
here you have a document of exactly what he meant, or at least we think what he meant.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same. It's the same for me. It's Britain's been on my mind recently because some of my he's always on my mind, but sort of particularly on my mind because one of my cello students has been learning one of the Britten cello suites, which was written for Rostropovich, not just for Rostropovich, but in collaboration with Rostropovich. So, I think that was one of the marks of Britten's greatness as a not just as a composer but as a general musician, that he formed these extraordinarily close relationships. Obviously Piers was the closest, but with Rostropovich, with Wisniewskaja, with other artists as well, because as you say, he was such a wonderful musician himself. He left such detailed instructions in his music as to how it went. It's sort of a pleasure, isn't it? And it works beautifully for the voice, doesn't it? That's the other thing about Britten.
Yeah, I have to say his music has been one of my best voice teachers, because he's extremely demanding, and
Yes.
you know, he wants very specific things from you musically and dynamically, most specifically.
Yeah.
And that requires some technical negotiation, which in the end has been really good for me. I mean, to kind of ask myself, how do I do that and do it in a, you know, use technique to get to that expressive device? It bleeds into everything else that I've done.
Yeah, exactly. He was. I think so. I think it might have been Rostropovich actually who said that Britten was the most complete musician he'd ever met in his life. He was just the most musical person he'd ever come across, and I think that's true. I find that true. I could talk to you about Britten all night. I'm not going to do that because we have.
We'll
Just
bring in a
one
few
little
other
anecdote.
things.
One little anecdote.
Please,
about
please.
pushing like people's technique. There's this anecdote of he wrote a lot for the harpist Auchinellist. And
Yes.
one of the first things he wrote for him, Auchinellist looked at him and said, "I'm not sure that these things are possible on the harp." And Britten sat down and showed him. He said, "No, if you do this, this, and this, it works." And I mean, I just feel like he does that for all of us. He kind of pushes us to our extreme and makes us better musicians because he was such a good musician.
Exactly. That's a fantastic anecdote actually, and that leads me to I put my, because I knew this was going to be a special evening. I put my special Welsh cufflinks on tonight, because I'm Welsh myself. Ossian Ellis was Welsh. I had the privilege of working with him once or twice, and I know he had a very close relationship with Britten. Another person who had a very close relationship with Britten, that Jen and I, if we can even remember that afternoon, was the Welsh composer, not that well known these days, Alun Hodinot, similar age to Britten, maybe slightly younger. He wrote a piece also for Rostropovich that I got to play in Cardiff, a piece for cello and orchestra. And he invited Jen and I to lunch the day after the concert. And it turned out to be one of the most boozy and epic lunches that I've ever had in my life. It lasted for about 6 or 7 hours. And we went to his house for aperitifs before the lunch. And he had a beautiful 1960s open plan modern style house with these amazing portraits and pictures by John Piper, the Welsh artist John Piper. Now, John and Myfonwy Piper are the dedicatees of Winter Words.
Right.
So it all
Great
I would never
artist.
have made that connection.
And it ended up with Hodinot telling us stories about Britten coming to stay with him in Wales and having them wander through the fields and look at the moon and stars at night and just sort of get inspired. And that's my little Britten anecdote.
That's amazing.
One of many. Anyway, but I know we haven't got tremendous amount of time. I want to move on because we've got some questions from
We do have a
people
few
here.
questions. Well, the first thing is, Nick, do you have a specialization for, or perhaps just a special affinity for, music in the English language?
Yes, because it's my native language. So that's always a relief. It's always nice to know what you're singing about, you know? So yes, I do. And there's something about, I don't know what it is about British music, but I feel a great affinity for it. I just think it's such beautiful stuff.
What about American music? Does that extend to, you know, the English language doesn't always have to mean English music. Thankfully, what do you do? Sometimes you want to give it a rest, you know.
Right. So yeah, and I love singing American music all the time. I mean, I certainly sing a lot of living composers who are based here, like Jake Heggie and Nico Muhly. I've done a bunch of their works, and also Missy Mazzoli. So you know, I'm a huge fan of singing American music, but it's interesting. I was invited to be the American representative at the Cardiff Singer of the World competition back in 2003. So I was 24 years old, and I was basically, I always tell people it's like being invited to be Miss America at the Miss Universe pageant. So, you know, I showed up, and the BBC was really, you know, sort of pushing us, saying, you know, as representatives of your country, pick music that is from your country. And I think they were thinking like, oh, pick folk songs. And just being this half Greek, half Chinese kid from Michigan, you know, child of immigrants, it felt strange for me to sing something like, you know, At the River or Shenandoah or any of those Copeland things. And so I didn't really actually have the nerve to do it. And so I kind of avoided a lot of American music for a few years early on in my career. And then I started, for some reason, I still felt comfortable like releasing albums of Benjamin Britten. So I don't know why that didn't stop me. And it's funny, I've sung so much in sort of like British music with a British dialect that I have to really think when I sing American music to kind of erase that and sing Americanized vowels and yeah. But I do love singing in English. It's fantastic. It's nice to be able to sing, you know, in your native language.
Indeed. Have you ever sung anything in Welsh?
I have, and oh my God, it's recorded somewhere. So I look forward to hearing your feedback sometime. No, there are two. So at the end of his life, Britten arranged, I think, 8 folk songs for harp and voice.
Yes.
Because he couldn't play anymore, and so they were kind of picky about who was playing for peers. And so these were obviously written for Ellis.
Yes.
And 2 of them, because he's Welsh, were in Welsh. And so I think they were on my second album called Still Falls the Rain. And I coached it. Hopefully it sounds okay. I've never seen so many consonants strung together.
I know it's quite an extraordinary language. I don't speak it myself. My mother does, and I'll get her to listen to you.
I hope she approves.
I'm sure she will. I'm sure. So now we're getting a real flood of questions. So let's.
Shall we keep going?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, talking about the 2 folk songs that you did, the folk song arrangements. One of our listeners.
This is Bob Hoyer, right? Who's one of our board members.
Mm-hmm. He said these last 2 songs remind me of some folk song adaptations done by Art Garfunkel. One example, Barbara Allen. Is Nick familiar with that one or any others? Do you favor other pop singers who adapt old English folk songs?
I do just love pop singers who adapt folk songs in general. I mean, you know, it's funny, lately, for some reason, the past week and a half, we've been listening to a bunch of, you know, Pete Seeger over here and, you know, and I recently was I performed a 12-tone piece by Ruth Crawford Seeger a few weeks ago with my organization in Chicago. And it's just interesting to realize that she is Pete Seeger's stepmother.
Yeah, that's an amazing connection. I know she was a particular favourite of an old friend of ours, sadly no longer with us, Oliver Nusson, the British composer Oliver Nusson. Right. He loved her. Yes, yeah.
And it's, you know, she turned her career towards analyzing and preserving and arranging folk tunes. And, you know, there's a whole tradition of that over here, John Jacob Niles. And I think it's really beautiful. I think it's always important to go back to those tunes because there's a reason that that music lives in our collective consciousness as, you know, people. So yes, I'm a fan of many folk singers.
That's what you've just said there about, you know, it leads me on to a question from Peter Sparling, which is, and it's so nice, Peter, that you could join us, because had the ghastly pandemic not forced us to change our plans, I would have had one of the greatest privileges of my life, which is to play the Winterreise with you with Peter's extraordinary dance interpretations projected behind us, and
We
that
hope
is
that will
something.
happen
With
one
that
day.
that will definitely happen
Good.
one day soon. There's absolutely no question of that. Also, gosh, Britten was such a marvelous Schubert interpreter as well, wasn't he? Really extraordinary pianist too. But anyway,
Peter's question
what's his
was,
question? Yes, sorry, I can't
has this
find
experience
it. There it
in
is.
quarantine without public live performance taught you anything about yourself and caused you to go inwards, perhaps to gain insights that you would otherwise not have experienced?
I mean, yes, I'm sure that's true for many of us. I mean, I was just saying to somebody the other day, just on a basic level, that having actual time to really practice as opposed to just kind of cram for the next thing
Yeah,
has, proved to be, and it's proved to be a bonus of a silver lining, shall we say, of this cloudy time.
exactly.
Yeah. And so, I think, anytime personally, I'm forced to sit still, I end up trying to turn inward. And, I found, I mean, technically speaking and musically speaking, I'm discovering whole new worlds, which is great.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Do you think your voice is, because I mean you're recording, of course, and broadcasting things, and I want to ask you a little bit about the CAI of Chicago that you founded, but presumably, like me and like a lot of us performing musicians, you've been singing a lot less in anger, as it were. And has that changed your voice?
Um, it has. I don't know that it's changed my voice necessarily in terms of the sound or the timbre, but it certainly, weirdly enough, I've actually found that I've been singing more during this. I've been practicing more because
Yeah.
it's sort of something that just kind of gets me through it gets me through the days. I don't
It
know.
does.
I hate to sound saccharine, but I really need to sing, and
Yeah,
I mean
yeah.
that's why I've chosen this life. And so doing it for myself, it was really disorienting at first to kind of not have to do something and instead kind of look at my shelf and say, so what do I want to practice? What do I want to sing?
There you
That
go.
was a really daunting question at first, actually. And, it's been a
Yeah.
whole smorgasbord of things, but like, it's, I think that's the thing that's changed, is that I feel like I'm finding ways to make things more efficient, more easy. I'm seeing, new turns and layers in the music and the words. I think that's the biggest change.
That's great. On that subject of you saying that you need to sing, that leads me to a question from our head of marketing, Tom Hitchman, who has asked that he said that what again? Sorry, Jen's going to have to read it because I can't
Sorry.
find it. There it is. I
You,
think that one here.
in our festival newsletter profile that you did recently, you mentioned that you had started music as a violinist and violist, but then realized that your calling was singing. Can you tell us more about that realization?
Great decision, by the way, says Tom.
Thank you. I agree. I'm sure I'm to spare you all what that was. You are happy, I assure you. It was, my parents gave me a violin when I was 4. I think the thinking was that, it would teach me good discipline, and it would make my application for Harvard look good or something. I don't know. But my lessons were Fridays during our recess hour. And so I was I wasn't thrilled about the whole prospect of being a violinist at the age of 4. So it took me a while to take to it. But then once I started playing in orchestras and in ensembles when I was about 11 or 12, that's when I knew I wanted to be a musician. There was something about making music with other people that really, really got my wheels spinning.
Yeah.
And so I remember announcing to my dad around that time, I want to be a musician. And he sort of looked at me in horror and said, well, there's many other things you can consider.
Why does it always happen that way?
Well, I mean,
The look of horror.
and so, I persevered, and I got really serious about my studies and my practice. And I think I was playing in something like 2 or 3 different youth orchestras. And, I was in whole hog. And When I was about 14 and a freshman in college, my high school did a musical every year. And so I thought, okay, I'm in high school. I'm going to audition for this musical. And that was sort of where people were like, oh, he's got a voice. And I was like, this is fun. So I kind of,
Musical was it? Will you tell us?
oh, it was Music Man, the Music Man.
Okay.
And the thing that they were really concerned about was finding the top tenor for the barbershop quartet, because you have to sing like high B's and C's. And as everybody knows, that normally does not sound good in a teenage boy's voice.
Right, yes.
But I had those notes naturally for some reason. And so, they cast me and I had this wonderful opportunity. And I kind of, I was really tantalized by musical theater for a little bit. And I went to the Interlochen Arts Camp up north in Michigan and went and I studied musical theater, which they ran that program like an equity theater company. They had equity stage managers. We did a whole professional audition process to be cast. And, we mounted a production sort of kind of trying to give us a preview of what professional theater life was like. And I pretty quickly realized that as much as I loved singing, I was really a musician at heart and not an actor. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to be a classical musician who sings. And I had no idea what that meant. I just knew that I needed to get a voice teacher. And so I headed over to the University of Michigan down the street and found my voice teacher, Rosemary Russell, who was my voice teacher from the middle of high school all the way through the end of college. And that's kind of how the transition began. But the thing that really tipped me off was that all the things that I was trying to do with my violin, I was able to do so easily and naturally with my voice.
Yeah.
Whereas with the violin, like I would get nervous, my hands would shake. So like it just was, it never felt reliable. And the singing did for some reason. So it revealed itself.
That's wonderful. That's what that makes. Yeah, that makes perfect sense to go with the thing that feels most natural. Really, I mean, it reminds me of the experience I had between the piano and the cello. Actually, of getting to a stage in my sort of early to mid-teens where they were pretty much going equally, but I found that I just wasn't quite as open emotionally on the piano. Just found it a little bit more challenging, and I sort of had my voice in the cello really. Although I have to say, and again, I hope I'm not going to scroll through everybody now, but I hope Peter's still here, because what you said earlier about having things to do at the beginning of the pandemic quarantine, I was also in a way blessed to have the prospect, certainly in February and March, before we knew that we couldn't go ahead with the festival, of having to practice some different songs from the Winterreise every day. And well, I can attest to the fact that he did. That I practiced the hell out of that piece, much more than I've ever practiced anything on the cello for a very, very long time.
Attest to that too. Yeah.
Well, that means we have to do it now.
We've got to do it. We've got to. Yeah, I've worked my butt off for that, and with great pleasure.
Well, I think we need to wrap up, but before we do you want to talk to us a little bit about things that you're doing at the moment? Projects that you're recording, or
tell us about what you're doing in Chicago, because it's not that far away, I think, for many of our audience here.
So about actually 10 years ago, I co-founded an organization called Collaborative Arts Institute of Chicago, or CAIC. And it's an organization that's devoted to promoting the art of the vocal recital and also the art of art song and vocal chamber music. So this year, it's our 10th anniversary, and we just could not stomach the idea of just scrapping everything. So we moved everything online this fall. And that meant that we started off with the recital that a tenor did, who's based in Chicago. And then we did our annual Collaborative Works Festival, which is a festival we put on every fall. It's generally 3 or 4 days, and it's just vocal chamber music that follows a theme. This year, our theme was celebrating the 100th anniversary of the ratification of the 19th Amendment to the Constitution, which was the one that gave women the right to vote. So we basically programmed 4.5 centuries of music by women.
Fantastic.
Wow.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and it was really, the process of putting it together was mind blowing. I mean, I've known that there have been women composers throughout history, but I just never knew that some of this music was so amazing. And
Yeah.
I have to say, actually, I think the set of programs that we ended up putting together are some of the most compelling and interesting ones that we've ever done.
Are they
So-
still available for people to go and see online at the moment, or not?
So sadly, no. But we will likely be reposting giant excerpts of them in the coming months because we want people to see these things again. This music really, really needs life, and so keep an eye tuned there. If you
Absolutely.
are
I
interested.
encourage all of you who are out there to. There we go. So look, someone has said, "Will the recordings be available on your website?" I'd love to listen. That's from Anne Ruffley.
Yes, eventually, yes, they will be.
Excellent. That's great.
So that's been great in Chicago, and then I've been, I've just finished filming a couple other projects. I filmed some Blitzstein songs for a gala concert, an online gala concert for Festival Napa Valley, which is around me here in California, and I think that airs the first week in December. And then I've also recorded more British music, actually, because we ended up putting a bunch of British Christmas carols on this Christmas program. But we recorded a holiday program for the California Symphony out here that airs sometime in December. And both of those are free, so, everybody
That's wonderful.
tune in.
That's wonderful. Gosh, one of the other things I'd like to do, I just want to briefly mention, because I can see them right here on my screen, Maury and Linda Binko, who have so generously sponsored this whole series. Maury has mentioned, I think, in a chat that one of his most memorable experiences was listening to you with David Daniels and Martin Katz performing Abraham and Isaac of Britten at Music Academy of the West some years ago. I can see Maury and Linda right next to you, at least on my computer. So, hello, Maury and Linda. It's
Hi,
great.
guys.
Thank you for making this possible. I hope that when we get you back to Detroit in person, maybe we can figure in a performance of Abraham and Isaac as well, because that happens to be one of my
That was the first piece by Britten I ever heard. I knew nothing of him until I heard that at the Marlborough Festival 100 years ago, and I was just spellbound.
Oh, it's an incredible piece.
Yeah.
It's an incredible piece.
and that I can play. That's way easier than the Winterreiser on the that I know I can play.
You're not getting out of Winterreiser. You've already done it.
No, I don't want to. I've invested so much. Well, this was great, Nick. It was just wonderful to hear you, and please pass on our congratulations to Bob
Yes.
Mollicone as well, who played so wonderfully.
Bob
Really,
sends his regards, and he's sorry he can't be here. He's actually coaching all afternoon today at the San Francisco Opera, so he's sorry he couldn't be here. And also, actually, before we sign off, it's my mom's birthday, so I have to say happy birthday.
I hope happy birthday.
She's on here somewhere. So
Oh, great. Fantastic. I've got a few little things to say at the end here. Thank you so much again. It was an incredible treat. The choir master's burial made me weep. I really had to pull myself together through the next couple of songs. So thank you for that too. Anyway, before we sign off, I'd like to thank all of the festival's benefactors and sponsors and donors for making possible another truly wonderful virtual. We've been so lucky with these virtual vignettes. They've just gotten better and better. They're just wonderful. Thank you so much. And assuming that you who are out there somewhere, wherever you are, assuming that you're enjoying these programs, we welcome you to join us in making a donation on our website. Please consider that. It's greatlakeschambermusic.org. And if you have anything to spare, we'd be very, very grateful, because these donations make this kind of activity possible. The next vignette will be held on Wednesday, the 13th of January at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And that's going to feature Swiss-born American pianist Gilles von Sattel, who's a wonderful artist, amazing pianist. I've been very lucky to work with him on many occasions. And his wife, Metropolitan Opera violinist Sarah Crocker von Sattel, who was formerly a violinist with the Detroit Symphony Orchestra. So I hope you'll all be able to join us then. And once again, thank you for your wonderful questions. Thank you, Nicholas, for an incredible recital. Please stay safe, and we'll see you soon.